Welcome to the Victory Podcast. I'm your host, Monique Watson. On this episode, I sat down with a friend of mine from college, Corey Daniels. We talked a bit about his career as an independent contractor and as well a host of popular topics. Take a listen, and I hope you enjoy it. So, welcome to the Victory Podcast. I'm your host, Monique Watson, and I have the fantastic pleasure to have a friend I've known for such a long time, but we've unfortunately moved geographically apart, so kind of separated in that way, but been connected on the social media. My friend, Corey Daniels. How you doing, Corey?
Hello, thank you very much for that lovely intro. I don't know if I'm deserving of all that, but yes, I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for having me. Yes, we did move. You left this coast, so I mean, I was here, and this is where we met, so I'm still here. But yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So with that, why don't we give our listeners a little bit of introduction about how we know each other and a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I actually don't remember how we met. I know that or the first instance because we spent so much time together in college, HU,
You
uh,
know?
and so we were a part of a friend group, and we just had a kind of a pod, if you will. I guess a word that means more now than it did then. And so we kind of just did everything together. We hung out together, we binge drink together, we just did things, and sometimes messy and but very memorable and very fun. I cherish all of that experience, and again, the reason why we're talking now is because we never really lost touch. So that's a really great thing. And the genius of social media, the one good thing of it is that we're able to do that and see each other in passing and kind of keep up with each other's lives and families' lives and things of that nature. A little about me. I'm from Maryland originally, suburbs of Baltimore. Grew up there, family's still there, and kind of just transitioned to DC when I came to Howard and just fell in love with it. And I've been here 11 years now. I am now, as I've gotten to the ripe old age of 33, ready to move to the country and buy a tractor. But, I think COVID has kind of pushed that further up in the to-do list. But yeah, just really easygoing guy, work government or in and around government all my career, and now kind of moving into more entrepreneurial endeavors, so which we'll get into, I'm sure. And yeah, that's me. I love to cook. You can follow me on Instagram at the Daily Quarry. Food, home, garden, DIY, all of that kind of stuff is kind of what I get into as far as hobbies, and also love a good cocktail and wine. That's also very important. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's get into that a little bit. You talked a bit about some entrepreneurial bend that you have now. I know you're working in the world of information security, which is such a pivotal and changing landscape, and kind of curious how you got into the world of information security and how that kind of entrepreneurial bend sort of sits now with you.
Okay. So, my education started in finance and then ended up political science, and which has nothing to do with technology from an educational background standpoint. I had been an intern in high school in Baltimore and came to DC and kind of moved the internship just through asking, the power of just asking, opened doors for me just by, being the squeaky wheel. I asked my internship coordinator because Social Security Administration had an office in DC, of course, could they find room for me there? They did. And while in college, I had a federal job that worked around school, something called the STEP program, which actually doesn't exist anymore. It's now called Pathways programs. So if anybody is in college or high school, I would encourage you to look into that. It's a great way to get into federal service. So I started doing that. And then once I left college and got into the professional realm, I became a full-time federal employee. I did that up until 2016 when I was recruited by Deloitte, consulting firm that actually worked for government. And from there, I just kind of had a lot of shorter term contracting, government contracting gigs at NASA, Census, FDIC, currently with Army and with USAID, Agency for International Development. And in my government contracting experience, you kind of see how the sausage is made as it relates to BD, business development. And I said I would be good at that, and I want to be able to expand my skill set in that. So how I got from poli sci to tech is because I worked in policy offices for most of my career, and a lot with cloud migration and blockchain and information security, all of that, because everything's online. That's a really big piece of the business at this point, a big focus. To prepare for things like we're in now, we're all basically cloud-based because we're remote. And I have been remote on the 2 federal contracts that I have for a year plus at this point, which has been fabulous, but we'll go down that road later. So I worked in policy offices, and then eventually I got around to tech policy. And if you can read policy, it's kind of the same. It's all written for a lay audience by the government, so agencies could implement the policies that are legislated or the statutory requirements that come about from the president, the White House, et cetera. So moved into tech policy, and at Deloitte, which is a really good starting point for younger professionals. It really builds you up and fortifies you, if you will, in the work load. It puts a really good professional spin on it. And I worked at NASA, and I was kind of thrust directly into having to manage business administrative systems. That's not something that I was trained on, but they knew that I had the ability to do so intellectually, and just being able to comprehend what needed to be done. So just really being given the chance and being open allowed me to kind of transform. And then from there, I went to Census Bureau, where I worked on enterprise architecture. And enterprise architecture is not something that you just go into. It's something that you have to kind of learn. But if you understand the policy part of it, which is the foundation, and then how things are built and how things work, then you can kind of understand that as well. From Deloitte, I then went to FDIC and actually worked in privacy, which is information security total, as it relates to the Privacy Act. So again, policy-based, but everything is built upon it. So that is something that was able to be understood and then applied into the real world, which led me to my current positions. And those consist of managing a privacy team, managing information security team, and a cybersecurity team, all kind of working in tandem together to secure information, PII, personally identifiable information, of government employees and people who use government systems all around the world. So we're like a 24/7, 366 business in both places, at Army and USAID. But that's kind of how the transformation got from A to B.
Awesome. That's quite a journey, and very interesting one. I definitely took notes about the pathways, and I'll include links in the show notes for folks in case they're interested in getting into the world of government work. But I think it was critical. Absolutely. One of the things about you mentioned about being open is so important to being flexible and kind of looking at opportunities that may not off the bat jump out to you as like, oh, this is something I maybe want to do, or something that maybe is a straight line to what you think your kind of goals or path is supposed to be. But being open and flexible, you can always gain something, learn something, I think, in that way. So you mentioned kind of this projects and contracting that you're doing now. How do you like, and you mentioned also having worked directly for the government, is there pluses and minuses? Where would you say, if you had a preference to pick one, like at 3 a.m. somebody wakes you up and like, okay, you have to either go back to be a government employee or continue to be an independent contractor, which would you choose? And is there certain reasons, or maybe you don't choose?
Oh yeah, there are definitely reasons to be on one side or the other. When I left in 2016, I was ready for something new. I had been in that world since high school, and when you're in your 20s, you want to you have more freedom to be risky, like just like an investment strategy. You have more time to make it up, and so government offers a certain level of security that you can't get in the contracting space because you become an at will employee of a company. You're not paid directly by the government, which removes that security away from you in a career conditional appointment, which is traditional government service. And so you get a solid thrift, you get a solid salary, you get okay benefits. And I would say actually better than okay. You get really good benefits for 2021. Maybe for 1996, it would be subpar, but we're not there. We're living in the present. So yeah. And I'm 33. So at this point, I figure I can kind of move to a more risky space. So higher risk, higher reward as well. You earn more. You have the opportunity to affect more change in a lot of ways. Government work can be very staid in some areas and very methodical and systematic. And whereas you're a contractor, you're brought in to create some change, some transformation. And a lot of those times, you can really move the needle on things and, grow your experience in a faster and more dynamic way. So right now, if it was 3 a.m. right now, I'd choose what I'm doing. Eventually, I had thoughts of going back to government, but then the entrepreneurial spirit, which I've always had, just kind of really set in. And so that doesn't mean working as a contractor under a company, but owning the company and being the person of record, hiring other people to work on the contract. So that's where I am in my journey, kind of transitioning into that. And just before, we get into that, it's not LLC Twitter. It's very, it's not easy. You have to work and you have to be well versed in what to do. You can end up in tax trouble. You can end up in legal trouble, and you need help if you're not an accountant, a lawyer, and a MBA, for example. So you really need to be able to, if that's what you want to do, there's a lot of groundwork to lay before you actually just jump into it, particularly doing business with the government. It can be very, very rewarding, particularly for people of color, but you got to know what you're doing.
Yeah, just for our listeners who may not be familiar with the idea of like this LLC Twitter, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is there's a lot on the Twitter social media sphere of, all you need to do is get an LLC, do this, do that, and you're going to all of a sudden be Jeff Bezos and blow up and everything's going to be hunky dory. And there's not really a clear and more in-depth path, which you wouldn't necessarily expect on social media. There's a lot, as you said, a lot of groundwork, a lot of steps, a lot of missteps you can make in that path to kind of growing your own business.
So with my experience in seeing really how the sausage is made on the back end, I've had some great relationships with the companies that I've contracted for. And currently, it's a bit of a mentorship opportunity for me to work for a small Black-owned business by the name of AITHERAS, based in Rockville, Maryland. The partner there is very about business development and moving the needle as it relates to more ownership of contracts in the Black community. So we've been shut out, really completely shut out of that area. And that's something that we could really benefit from. The Small Business Administration, as well as states and local governments, have a lot of programs as it relates to setting up small, disadvantaged, minority-owned businesses. It's a lot of information out there, but you got to really sort through it, and that takes time. But to answer the question about LLC Twitter, that is the memes that are floating around. It's like, okay, all right, you got some money, you got a stimulus check, and you are going to go and spend $250, and you're going to set up, an LLC. Great. Okay, so then what? You have to know that an LLC is a type of corporation, limited liability, and you have to know how that's taxed. If you're sole proprietorship, if you're the only owner, you got to know how to hire employees. You got to know how to file your taxes with the state where you file your LLC. So great, you have an LLC, but does it work for you? Or did you just put the money out to say you had one? That's only step one. Step 2 through 65 require research and a lot of professional help. So I've recently reached out to a financial planner because in effort to move into 100% entrepreneurial endeavor, you need to have people that have your financial back. You need to make sure that you are very clear on what's coming in and what's going out and what's going to Uncle Sam. If you have employees or want employees, that's something you got to figure out how to pay them, tax them, unemployment insurance, medical insurance, et cetera, et cetera. You have to decide whether they're W-2 employees or 1099 employees. These things aren't just easy things to come by. You gotta teach yourself. You gotta become educated, and a lot of times that requires an accountant, and it requires an attorney, and it requires a financial planner. So that's where I am currently. I look to have things kind of set up in that way fully by year's end, and then I can start going out to look for contracts myself, and then subbing to the companies that I work for as a total 100 independent contracting company and not an individual.
Cool. Very exciting. I'm sure you'll accomplish that by year's end, if not well before, and be the next hottest contractor out there.
Your mouth to God's ears. Like
you can do
Thank
it.
you.
I know you can.
We'll see.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's talk a bit about the Daily Quarry and some of that. I know in that vein, both in the cooking front and things, you also have some social commentary you also share with your friends on the social media side. I'd like to get your take on a couple of what I'll call kind of hot topics, things that are sort of relevant. As we know, we're still going through this pandemic. Thankfully, there seems to be some light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccines and all that good stuff. I'm curious what you did. What are some of the things you did during the quarantine, some of your quarantine chronicles, if you will, that help to kind of keep your sanity? So you seem sane, at least over the Zoom.
Oh yeah. So I like to think that I am, pretty sane.
Most people think they're sane, even the ones who aren't. So
I was about to say, there's some deniability in there, but that's okay. First thing is believing it. So I'm a person that does not believe in stress. I like to eliminate any type of stressful anything at all. I'm very blessed in the way that I have a very supportive family who everybody is self-contained, and we can be support for each other, and we're very close. But I also believe that in friendships as well. And so I have a small, tight-knit group of people that I can count on for certain things. Their word is their bond, and they're really good people. I think that I have some very good people around me, as well as a very, very good partner. His name is Drew. And Drew and I are kind of opposite ends of the spectrum, but that works because it's like an up, down, back, forth situation. And so that is completely a recipe for a good life, if you will. So I don't take it that I'm very take it for granted that I'm very blessed in the situation that I have right now. I also have jobs that kind of scaled to remote working. That's something that it set a precedent for me that I'm not going back. There's no return for me. This is what I'm going to be doing until I'm doing what we discussed on my own. And I see no reason to be commuting in DC at this point. I never envisioned myself being back on a train
For
or
sure. For
being
sure.
smashed up against 100 of my closest friends. I just don't see that from my life. And I understand that, some people can't take being in the house. I love it at home. It's very comfortable here. This is where I pay for things. I have channels and food and, some wine. I'm good here. If I could fit a gym in this house, I'd do that. So I'm okay. And literally, this has been a time of level setting, I would say. Literally writing down things, affirmations for myself, and then trying to draw a map to get them to fruition. And the luxury of time is underrated. Time to consider, time to ponder, time to be quiet, just still. That's something that a gift that I consider a gift of the pandemic. And I think that I have been able to expand my horizons in my mind during this time, which has also been pretty valuable. It's like, okay, well, you have these fleeting dreams, but what are the pieces that make sense to lead up to it? So the Daily Quarry is, I always love to cook. I think when we were in college, I cooked as well. But that's just been a hobby of mine since childhood. And I don't want to do it professionally, although I have done it in a catering situation. I don't want to do it in a restaurant that I don't own. One day I would like to have a restaurant of my own, but as in a creative direction standpoint, not a chef. I did not go to school for cooking or anything, but it's just what I like to do. And I think that everybody needs an outlet, a hobby, something creative that they do. I think it helps with the stress level. It balances out things. And so the Daily Quarry is really one half of the things that I like to do at home, kind of decorating, kind of DIY projects, things on the car. I don't really believe in calling anybody for anything. I just want to do it myself and figure it out. It's a rewarding experience. I know that's not everybody's thing, but I'm just saying find your thing. Around the social commentary, so the Daily Quarry is one thing, cooking, home, things of that nature. And then I really like to talk a lot. And sometimes, I guess, sometimes, I like to host people. And in our pod, I've done so during the pandemic. We've all been together and we're all vaccinated. Thank God. So we're able to do that again. Hosting dinner parties and having spirited debate. And I don't fall in a lot of millennial, Black, upwardly mobile, stereotypical opinion bases like a lot of folks in our age group do. I have some very conservative principles about certain things, and that kind of clashes with the more liberal folks that are around me, which I love. I think it's great. And we can kind of come to some consensus about things, but sometimes we can't, and that's okay too. But food and conversation, definitely. Politics, love it. So that's the Daily Quarry and the social commentary kind of pushed together.
Absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of politics and social commentary, so we're in a new administration. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah.
Thank God.
Let's just have a moment. Like, I want to almost pause the tape and like have a Holy Ghost, like catch the spirit of making it through these last 4 years. Let me tell you what. And I'm just curious, especially being you're in the DMV, or as people who have never lived there would call it, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, which is kind of the Washington metropolitan area. What's it like been in the 4 years, sort of in that previous administration of the man who shall not be named? And then if there's anything you're starting to notice to the negative or the positive with the new administration. Curious on your take on these things.
So, okay, I saw the transformation from the Bush years to the Obama years to the Orange years to now. And so I've been in DC for kind of all of that. And under Bush, I feel like remember he came to Howard and they shut down the yard, and the Washington Post wrote this ridiculous article about Howard students were upset because they couldn't go to Soul Food Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
At the calf.
No, we were upset because I was trying to get to my test. I had an exam.
Right. Like, you interrupted campus. How about that?
To an event that students didn't go to. That was the other thing.
to show up. So, okay. And I hate to say that Bush isn't as bad because we have something else to compare it to. No, the bar was still very, very low. It just went subterranean after the fact. But to come out of the Bush years and then to really like feel the wonder and the magic of the Obama years. I mean, we stayed up, we had parties, we were like doing the electric slide on U Street after on election night. And that was just like absolutely magic. And then to see it all kind of crash down. I remember the days leading up to Orange's inauguration, we went downtown and it was like the pitchforks and the Conestoga wagons were out. Like, people were just being like crazy. Like, it was so tribal and almost kind of scary. And we didn't recognize DC. I think for a solid maybe 3 years, I didn't even visit the mall because there was always something. I'm speaking of the National Mall. There was always some type of demonstration or some type of kerfluffle going on that you didn't necessarily want to engage or be a part of. And that was just like crazy. Like, we stayed away from places that we would walk at night, and just because it just didn't seem safe. So to lead us to now, I'm grateful. I'm very glad. I'm glad we eked it out because it had to happen. I don't really know how we would have survived. And with the events of January 6th, the storming of the Capitol, where, obviously the bullets had run out or something. What do you make of that? Like, what do you say to that? How does that happen? And there are really no real repercussions for the people who perpetrated it. That's a problem. I mean, it speaks to a larger racial injustice, but that really was disturbing. Now, I do contend that it was white folk business. And I like to stay out of white folk business.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that Black people need to stay out of white folk business. As Toni Morrison said, racism is white people's problem, and they should figure out what they are going to do about it. Leave me out of it. And I fully and totally endorse that and stand behind it. So.
Absolutely, for sure. It's definitely, and in earlier episodes, if you're listening to this, check out the episode I had with my cousin Lee. We talked a bit about this idea of what a lot of people confuse in the world of like diversity, equity, inclusion. I don't know, we're not exactly talking about that, but you mentioned about being like kind of white folks' business and they need to work it out. Is it's so interesting that they look to people that look like you and I to kind of answer those questions or educate them on certain things, and thinking that these conversations about issues is sort of the work of that work, and it's like, okay, we sat and talked about it, so that's good enough, right? That's sort of it, versus they need to actually put boots on the ground and really get into and lead these kind of conversations and fights on issues, to in order to challenge the racist systems and things that exist. So it's just interesting.
Interesting. A call out from when I actually worked my last federal experience, and we were doing a offsite for the office, and we were at this facility, and they brought in a facilitator who wanted to discuss diversity. So everybody was kind of on eggshells as it related to wanting to discuss it. I was young, I was in my 20s, and compared to the rest of the folks there who were baby boomer or Gen X. So I was one of the only millennials. And so I just let it rip. Like, basically, if you want to ask these questions, then I'm going to give you answers to them. I don't remember exactly what the questions were, but they were baiting. What do you see differently about this person? And what you're trying to really like drill out your bias, but not too much to make anybody uncomfortable. But you can't have these types of conversations in a vacuum. They're not effective or efficient. And so me letting it kind of just go and explaining what it feels like to be a Black man in the workplace literally got me into a situation where my boss kind of pulled me in his office, and he was very senior at the agency I worked with for, and was like, "Are you okay? You seemed angry." And I said, "No, I'm not angry. This is just basically what goes on. I was just trying to, be a narrative and show you what happened, because that's what the facilitator was asking, but nobody was giving any real feedback." And so that taught me a lesson that, okay, you can say what you want, but everything has a consequence, a reaction. And the reaction was that I wasn't, cited, or I didn't feel any kind of way, like I wasn't demoted or anything. But the way that they dealt with me in the office, totally different. You would have thought that I was like Huey P. Newton after the fact, that I was trying to be, open and honest with the conversation. So that showed me that in these D&I situations, this was 2016. I think we've made some progress in 2021, but in these situations, you really can show up as your full self, but is it going to serve you? And that's a risk that you're going to take. But I also feel that the D&I, I feel like the diversity and inclusion facilitators or ombudsmen or the heads of such departments, they need to be diverse and inclusive in their thought process. I just don't think that white male, white female are those people to be able to have the bandwidth or the tools to even deal or unpack these things responsibly. And so it was a very interesting situation. But when that happened, I was kind of ready to leave, like shortly thereafter, because it was just an uncomfortable situation, just based on me sharing my experience, not attacking anybody and not being argumentative or anything, just sharing, and which is what they asked for. And yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah. Very interesting indeed. It's interesting how those interactions can go variety of different paths. So let's switch gears a bit. Switching gears. So of course we can't, as two distinguished Howard alumni, not talk about our sister and fellow distinguished Howard alumni, Madam Vice President Kamala
Yes.
Harris. Yes. Wait, you know?
You know?
Exactly. Mamala. Indeed, indeed.
That's what her stepchildren call her.
That's what her stepchildren. I thought that's so cute, and I think it's sort of. I read her book, and it's really really interesting because that sort of ties into like some other Asian terminology as well. What are your thoughts on how she's doing in this administration so far? I know it's quite early overall. What are some things you think she should tackle? I think she's currently been tasked with the immigration, as the people at Fox News would say, the crisis at the border.
At the border.
It's crisis. There's people there, but that's I don't know why that's a crisis. But anyway, these artificial borders. But yeah, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I think that Vice President Harris is, I wanted her to be President Harris. Let's start with that. And I knew that when she dropped out of the race, that she was on the short list or the definite for VP. At that point, we were like, okay, it can't be Bernie. And I'm not sure about Warren. She's got a plan, but I'm not sure that it's going to work against Trump.
Yeah.
But how do we figure this out? Insert Black folk. Congressman Clyburn, South Carolina, basically king-made Biden and brought him back from the dead after the South Carolina primary. And then I said, okay, well, lock, stock, and barrel, we got to go Biden. This is what we're doing. It helps that he's, Obama's homeboy, fair, but kind of definitely wanted to see President Harris. And I am not sure that we won't. Not this term, God willing, and the creek don't rise, but at some point in the future. Divisible by 4.
Yeah, I have a feeling that she made a deal and said, I will sign on. This is just, I have no skin in the game. I don't know anybody to know that this is the answer. But my guess is that she made a deal that said, I will step down. I will, 1, be vice president. 2, you will not run in 4 years because you'd be too damn old. So you will king make me into the next president. That's what I think happened.
A reporter asked him maybe 2 weeks ago, was he running for a second term? And he was like, oh yeah, definitely. And I'm like, coincidentally, this was also like around the same time where he was tripping up the steps on Air Force One. And I was just like, can't they get this man an escalator? Like, I don't understand why this would be a problem. But, here we are. But to answer your full question, I think she's doing an amazing job. I think that, having these high profile assignments is something that is going to really build her political capital. I think that she needs to add something else to her plate, which is student loan reform, and figure out how they're going to get rid of some of this student debt that we were sold into a dream of. I think that is the pinnacle touchstone political issue of our time as the next holders of the wealth in this country. I think that we need to figure out what we're going to do about these student loans, because at this point they have rendered a bachelor's degree and almost a master's degree in certain unskilled areas and a few skilled areas useless. Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, all of the big tech companies are now in their job descriptions basically saying, oh, if you have a certification and this many years experience, degree is optional. Well, excuse us. Like, Like, what did you? Why did we? And now we can't buy a house, and now the economy is flat because y'all saddled us with debt, and now we can't even file bankruptcy to get out of it because the bankruptcy laws changed in 2005. Coincidentally, when most millennials were headed off to college. So yeah, it's a trick bag you guys put us in. But I would like to see a Vice President Harris. I don't want to wait till she's President Harris to figure out something with this. Like, what you gonna do about that, Joe? So yeah, definitely waiting on that. I think she's doing an amazing job. I think that she's up to task and ready. Howard breeds that. I think Black breeds that. And I'm very excited about it. So we'll see what happens. It's a much better time in Washington. I will say that.
Awesome. That's good to hear. The energy is kind of resetting itself from the very contentious 4 years that we had with, I love how you call them orange. That's so perfect. Um, it's the best. Yeah, the orange years. Yeah, the orange years were, I tell you what, I'm gonna tell my children about them. I don't care what they're gonna write in the history books or whatever. I'll tell you the real.
Like it literally gives like remember that scene in Green Dreamgirls where she was like, magic ain't got no father. That's what I feel like about America. Like during those years, like we just was out here ward of the state, hanging in the
Just
wind.
winging it, just holding on by fingernails and prayers. Like that was it. Oh, it was a time that is thankfully past.
Hopefully he doesn't run again. Hopefully he's in prison.
I'm waiting on the Southern District of New York to get to getting in their case.
They have
or Florida
their
or whatever.
time.
It must be a doozy then.
Good. Come on.
I'm down for it. Make it
Right.
stick. No, he doesn't have the best lawyers anyway, so it just needs to be sort of good, I think. And he'll be able to get out of it. He won't be able to get out of it, should I say. So last topic we'll touch on is sort of hot in the topics, unfortunately, super relevant, even more so, is the Queen Elizabeth and the royals. Unfortunately, there was the recent passing of her husband, Prince Philip. And I wanted to get your thoughts on, really initially wanted to get your thoughts on the Harry Meghan interview with Oprah, and sort of your thoughts on some of the things that rose during that, and sort of the royals in general. So just kind of your take on that kind of topic.
So my first thought is, during that interview, it's very interesting that two people that were absolutely directly connected to descendants of enslaved persons were rocking the core of the institution that perpetuated the transatlantic slave trade. That to me is like, if the chickens didn't come home to roost, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
I literally thought that was very interesting and poignant, if you will. My thoughts on the royals really kind of are, why are we still so obsessed with them? I thought we wanted independence.
I thought we got the independence. We are our own people. Why do we care? I don't understand it. I was just curious.
All the way down the rabbit hole for these people, and they don't like really even fancy us in that way. I think that they think we're heathens, just like the rest of the real world does, as it relates to being an ignorant American abroad. And I just don't get our fascination with them. I'm glad that Meghan got her freedom. It's very interesting that it seems more of like a cult work environment than a family. But I think that it rings true in a lot of situations and dynastic situations that we have here in America in these families. So I'm not surprised, but I'm glad she got out. And now with the unfortunate passing of the gentleman, the Queen's husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, gone too soon.
At 99? gone too soon.
Okay, I'm sorry.
At 99 years old, gone too soon. Oh,
I am going to be very interested to see how it turns out that they are going to make their return back. I'm sure that the family is not very happy about her getting basically another international stage, but that's going to happen because all eyes are definitely going to be on her, Meghan, if not her and Harry, but definitely her. So it'll be very interesting. I'll catch the cliff notes. I don't need to be all in the weeds of the things. I think it's just more interesting and telling things to deal with here. I don't really go down as a black male, just don't really get into them that much. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. I saw earlier that Fox News tried to connect Oprah to stressing him out, which caused his untimely passing. And I was just like, I don't even understand. This is a tangent, but I don't even understand why Fox is even allowed to use the word news. I would call them the Fox Entertainment
Network. Yes, exactly.
Like, I don't get it, but okay.
All right. If they want to use news, it should just have a question mark after it. Like news?
Right. Perhaps.
News-ish?
Adjacent. Like, I don't get it, but the privilege of it all.
Indeed. And that is the privilege of it all could be an episode in and of itself for a future day.
Oh yeah. Like, it's so many unpackable things in there. Like, if we just said, I don't think a task force over 10 years would be able to pull out all the privilege that certain people have and don't recognize, or the ones that they exercise and say that they don't have. But another topic. Long podcast for that.
Yeah, that would be an extra. I have learned that trying to enumerate said privilege to people who have it is an exercise in futility a lot of times, because they just. I remember having a discussion in my previous job with a guy, and I was trying to explain privilege, and then he told me this story about being allowed into like an honors something or other in college, though he didn't quite have the GPA, but he connected with some person and this whole thing. I said, that is privilege. It's like, no, because I really worked hard and this and that. I said, and I stopped myself and I was like, okay, fine, we're done. Like, it was okay, cool. Like, I kind of cut the conversation. I was like, okay, great. Have a great day. And I just,
have a great day.
Okay. It's just like, I had the epiphany of, it's really hard to unpack that for people because they, one, have to unpack it for themselves. And two, they've never experienced a world where they've been anything else but white. And it's this world that we live in the Western culture and everything is made and designed for pro-whiteness and designed for them to succeed at its core. And just in the systematic ways in which things are set up, from pick a topic. And so I just realized that was the thing. So I've never really got into those conversations in depth one-on-one with people, because it just becomes an exercise in futility that just is going to frustrate me. And then they just kind of like, meh, go about their lives. So, but yeah, tough topic talking about privilege and all that jazz. So,
and I don't want to be disingenuous in the privilege conversation, because we have to also, and I mean us personally, we have privileges as well. And I like to know that I am exercising a privilege when I am, as it relates to just, location, geography, just whatever it is, being aware that you are privileged comparatively from our peers. And that I think that's very helpful as well. If only, other folks could be as enlightened.
Yeah. I think some folks will get there. Some people won't. I mean, as per with most things, I think some people who are earnestly looking to grow and understand will find the resources and kind of have that aha come to Jesus moment, if you will. And then people who are not aren't interested in those conversations, aren't interested in looking into anything deeper, will do what is required of them at the bare minimum. And it is what it is at that point. I won't say that that's okay, but you can't hamstring them, tie them to the post and make them do things.
Unfortunately. No, I'm kidding.
Absolutely. So this has been a fantastic conversation. I always love connecting with you. I wasn't sure if there's anything you wanted to share with the people as we close out, anything, ways they can connect with you, anything you want to kind of plug or anything like that.
Well, ways you can connect with me. No plugs yet. I can be found at the Daily Quarry on Instagram and Facebook. That is my cooking and home DIY page. I'll be relaunching a website for around that, probably Q4 this year. Looking at actually building out some retail space online as well to sell some assorted items. So yeah, definitely working on some things professionally as well as personally. On the Daily Quarry side, personal, professional work, and yeah, we'll see what we come up with in the rest of this crazy year, which I think is going to be like 2020 Junior. And definitely RIP DMX. That was really sad. I was really, sad to hear that. I guess, he made his mark, and
Indeed.
It was time for him. So hope he's at peace.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure in the show notes we'll have the link to Corey's Instagram and Facebook pages. So if you're curious to follow and kind of stay in tune on what he's doing, at least in the kind of food culinary fantasticness space, that'll be a way to connect. But thanks again, Corey, for coming on the show.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that. I got to come see you soon too.
So thanks again to my guest, Corey Daniels. Lots of great conversation, lots of useful information. If you're looking to connect with Corey, I have his information in the show notes, both for his Facebook page and his Instagram. But yeah, reach out, follow the Daily Corey, and stay tuned for what's going on in that world. As always, you can share this podcast with your friends, your family, and even your enemies. You can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms by visiting our website at thevictorypodcast.com and visit the Where to Listen page to share the different podcast platforms. Also, if you'd like to support the Victory Podcast, you can also check out our merch page. That's also on the Victory Podcast page, or become part of our Patreon, where you can get exclusive content and early access to different content. So I'll end this episode as I do every episode. Every problem has a solution. It's whether you're willing to do the work to find it. Let's do the work and be victorious.